In our Worldly Today, President Trump dismissing the Russian bounty intelligence story as a hoax meant to damage him and Republicans. The president often touts his relationship with his Russian counterpart, Vladimir Putin.
The White House also responding tonight to a bombshell report accusing Russia of offering bounties to the Taliban to kill American soldiers in Afghanistan.
And now you know from this reporting in the New York Times, which has since been confirmed by the Wall Street Journal, that not only does the president know that Russia was paying for American soldiers' deaths.
News. Get this. The Washington Post is now reporting that the alleged Russian bounties to Taliban fighters in Afghanistan are believed to have resulted in the deaths of U.S. troops.
Like this New York Times story about a stunning U.S. intel assessment, finding that Russia secretly offered Afghan militants bounties to kill U.S. troops.
They assessed with low to moderate confidence, as you alluded to, that Russian intelligence officers sought to encourage Taliban attacks against U.S. and coalition personnel in Afghanistan. Low to moderate confidence, low to moderate confidence, low to moderate confidence.
Welcome to Beyond Narratives, and welcome to our 5th episode. I've got my co-host here, the ever-vigilant Chris Nonis from Down Under, and I'm Al, straight out NYC, the ever-hardcore leftist. Combined, we are Beyond Narratives, the podcast that combats the CIA-MI6 propaganda matrix and gives you a viewpoint you will not hear anywhere else. We'll also tackle stories that emanate from the nexus of the culture wars, finance, tech, and of course, politics. So let's get started. Hey Chris, what's on your mind this week?
Corporate communism. A lot of the things that's happening around us today can be linked to this phenomena. And I know there are a lot of people who listen to this and go, oh, here we go, this is another BoomerCon talking point that I'm sure this guy learned from someone like Dinesh D'Souza or something. But no, man, I mean, just have a look at everything that's around you. Let's talk about the woke leftism, or whether when you see Gillette running some disastrous ad campaign about toxic masculinity, which, mind you, lost them a shitload of revenue because who uses Gillette products the most? Yeah, that's right. Don't attack your biggest consumer base, bitch. And
it wasn't their whole brand based on masculinity.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you're selling shit that is primarily used by men, and then if you look at the history, you have all these nice hot chicks with Gillette written around on their butt cheeks, walking around in Formula One racetracks in Monte Carlo, and so you know where your cash cows are. So why on earth would you just be so stupid enough to bite the hand that feeds you, especially considering that you're not going to get any extra revenue. I mean, you might get some sort of fascistic power behind it, but you're going to get woke and go broke. So, yeah, and also other stuff as well. I mean, when you talk about corporate communism, you can see one of the leading stories right now is the so-called self-proclaimed Marxist Black Lives Matter leader who actually has... now we find out that she has 4 houses and a property portfolio worth close to $3 million. And you can see how not only has she been outed as a fraud, but you can see how the media comes in quickly to defend her. I mean, I've seen on Twitter when this story first broke out, I don't know if you noticed, but they were talking about, oh, she has a house that's worth $1.4 million in California. It doesn't buy you much. 1.4 million is nothing. And then all the Twitter useful idiots went on to attack anyone who brought this up, saying that, okay, so you're threatened by the success of a strong black woman, and they used every freaking platitude and every loaded term they could possibly imagine just to try and discourage anyone from ever digging further into this issue. But now we find out that she doesn't just own one house that's worth $1.4 million, but she owns 4 houses, and she has a, rather diverse property portfolio. So yeah, that's what I mean by corporate communism. This whole idea that a lot of the big corporations are working with these so-called the stylistic, the cosmopolitan cosmopolitan class who likes to talk about socialism, just to sound edgy. So so that's what's on my mind.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, she was actually on a TV interview, like maybe 2 or 3 days ago, I think, and the guy asks her the same question, like, "Hey, people say that this is completely, like, hypocritical of you for, like, flaunting your wealth and living in fancy houses," and she completely deflects, and she goes, "I'm investing in my family." Like, nobody else does that, right? And then goes on to ramble. What she does is just like everybody else. But the thing is, everybody else does not have $3 million, you idiot. Right? And them establishment media to the rescue to prop up these fakers, man. Even Facebook was censoring sharing her story because, they have the usual bullshit they pull out, like violating community guidelines. And they said, "Oh, there's you're sharing personal information about her." I mean, like, every story has personal information, man. So they're just reaching, just like the Hunter Biden stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And you can see how they came to defend for her and at the same time attack anyone who continued to expose her. And that's why you see a lot of these so-called self-styled Marxists or socialists on par with a lot of these big corporations. Yes, they claim that they are fighting the big corporations. AOC says, "I'm fighting Amazon, blah, blah, blah." But when the push comes to shove, they are pretty much all on the same boat. They are all defending each other. They are all attacking anyone who criticizes them. So definitely they are in the same club. And to me, that pretty much is the epitome of corporate communism. At the same time, you can also see that these people who are calling themselves socialists, like AOC, you constantly see in the media, you constantly see people being harassed when they're being criticized. I mean, one of the big stories that emerged since our last episode was how one of these guys, they got a visit from a California state trooper or the police for speaking ill of AOC on a tweet. I think.
Oh, he didn't even speak ill of her. He just said he sort of took a tweet that he pulled out a tweet and said that this hardly looks like resistance or something like that, and that's all he did. He didn't say anything else, and they showed up at his house. They're saying they were sent there by Capitol Police, and she disappeared for like 10 days after that into the void.
Yes, I don't think I did hear some follow-up news reports on how some of her surrogates did denounce that story and said that is not cool, but I don't think we heard any comments from her directly. And they like to do that too. Sometimes they like to, occasionally throw a bone like she does with the Democratic Party, just to give you the impression that, oh yeah, she's fighting both sides of the aisle type of bullshit. But by and large, in the past, she has encouraged attacks on anyone who criticizes her or anyone who criticizes the policies of her party. She has, I think, one day, I remember not long ago, she put out a tweet saying, "If you are losing followers on Twitter, do not make it public, or do not advertise it, because the chances are that those people who are being deplatformed on Twitter are Nazis." So yes, she has directly or tacitly in the past encouraged ruining the lives of anyone who stands against her. And I mean, and this is a classic example of I mean, if this is not fascism, I don't know what is. And that is exactly what I mean by corporate communism, because think about what fascism was, right? In many ways, in fascism, or how you pronounce it. I know I need to be a bit work on my accent, because I see that our I see that I see our podcast is gaining a lot of fans because of my accents. Yeah,
There you go. You gotta
yeah.
roll with what you
I gotta
have.
make it. I gotta exaggerate it now to sound more Indian.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's make it fascist thing.
Yeah, fascist. Yeah, and in many ways, in the case of corporate socialism, the economy is monopolized by state-favored corporations, sometimes at the direction of states like in China, and sometimes, closer to a partnership with the states, as it is currently in the United States. And that's what's happening.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's exactly what is happening with a lot of this woke capitalism. You see a lot of these companies like Amazon or Gillette or Nike, for that matter. Yeah, suck shit, Nike, your store got burned by Antifa. Yeah. Yeah, no matter how many times you try to kiss their butt. So so these companies are aligning themselves, and the tech companies are a good example. Google and Facebook.
Or the worst.
Yeah, they're aligning themselves with all these progressive causes to give by themselves unlimited power to whether it is to.
Well, I think they knew that the Dems were going to win. I mean, I don't know. How do you think they knew? But they knew, and I think they started this bullshit before the election so that they wouldn't be broken up. Because if they piss the Dems off, then Dems are going to try and break them up just like Republicans.
Yeah, exactly. There was an article by Spiked online about why big businesses love woke leftism, and I think in on this particular occasion they were talking about the Black Lives Matter and the whole and their whole hypocrisy when it comes to wealth accumulation and capitalism, while claiming to be Marxist. So one of the things, the interesting facts they brought up was that the potential for racism in the workplace, whether overt or in the form of microaggressions, has also given management much more authority to monitor workers' interpersonal relationships and even their private lives and political activities, particularly on social media. Race has always been relied on by elites to divide and manage people, but where they once drew on racist tropes, now they draw on anti-racism. That's like one of the co-founders of BLM earning a fortune and amassing a property empire is not a bug but a feature of elite-driven racial politics. Black Lives Matter is the best thing to happen to capitalism in many years. And I mean, I don't have to agree with everything in this article, but the article does touch up on the one of the core tenets about the whole corporate Marxism I was talking about, because there are many layers to this one, and this is, I mean,
that BLM was a complete, the moment I saw it being painted on the street, I knew it had been co-opted. I was like, you know what? And that mayor who did that, the next second she asked for $400 million for the goddamn cops, right? If you think about it, they can do that openly without taking any hits, right?
Yeah.
Which just goes to tell you that that's all you need to be in this country. Just be performative bullshit, and people just believe you. That's about it. It's always the same thing, again and again, rinse, repeat.
And there's this new generation of race entrepreneurs like Robin DiAngelo. I mean, these people there's a lot of money to be made by these types of whole theatrics that's happening.
And if they get out of control, just send Obama in to stop the protest and the strike. That's where he went in and told LeBron to start dribbling, right?
I mean, I will put that article on the footnotes as well, so for people to refer to. So these politicians are exhibiting this behavior, and they don't seem to have an issue with it because they know that they can get away with it now. So because only people who keep pointing this out are either the handful of renegade journalists like Glenn Greenwald or Matt Taibbi, who, they have a substantial base, but they still don't reach out to the vast swaths of the demographics across the world. And at the same time, and the right-wingers, so whose credibility has already been destroyed because media likes to always paint all right-wingers as these Nazis or conspiracy theories.
Well, that's why I
or
mean, like
just
same
crazy.
thing
And,
that this whole. I wanted to mention that Russia bounty stories that's been debunked like 6 million
yeah.
times, and now like the military came out like this week, and the CIA somehow came out from the shadows and said, "Hey, you know what? This we have low to moderate confidence that this is like a real thing." And if you think about it, why did the right wing dismiss it? Right? Because it was against Trump, and for no other reason. They didn't like look at the merits, right?
Yeah.
So they're like the biggest useless idiots, or useful idiots in this case. I don't get it. Like they're so. I mean, it's.
Yeah, that's the thing about the right wing, especially when I talk about right wing, I'm talking more about the boomer cons because they are the gift that keeps on giving, and they don't do themselves any favors when they like to embrace disinformation or partisan hackery. And you can see that also with every time there is a story, you can see how all they care about is the short term gains, the gotcha moments. So if Biden is caught with putting kids in cages, suddenly they start acting like, you can see, like you can see Ted Cruz suddenly like becoming like a Democrat. He might as well just go and cry at the border now, just
I saw some memes on that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, these people are so short-sighted in how they suddenly just embrace anything that just to oppose the other side. But yeah, going back to what you were saying about the whole the U.S. intel walking back on the claims that Russians put bounties on American troops. I mean, this is a big story, and nobody wants to cover it. And when you do cover it, I hate going to Twitter and actually seeing how shitlibs. How they
they're using woke feminism now, right, to stay there.
Yeah, not just that. So let's just say, for example, if someone like Jimmy Dore or Glenn Greenwald just points this out, I think Jimmy Dore said that he said, weird how the Daily Beast spread this false conspiracy theory for 2 years straight while pothead YouTube hosts were debunking it at all in real time. Yeah. Good thing, the good thing the CIA finally told them it was fake, or they'd never know. And the only thing what the shitlibs do when they see a post like this, they don't actually argue the merit of it. They will just write some catchphrase or some sort of a deflecting point. They make these really pathetic attempts to muddy the water, saying that, okay, so even if it was fake, the way the Trump administration handled it, or blah blah blah.
Yeah, they're still like incensed and Trump deranged. 6 months after he's gone, or something like that.
Yeah. The way I get physically ill when I read a lot of their comments because they have become so good at these word salads, and they also get a lot of support for making these disingenuous arguments as well. And I try my best not to read. What people say. I mean, I kind of have to in order for this podcast because, how else are we? We kind of have to know how people are going to react, right? So, but yeah, it's not something I enjoy because I just know exactly the type of people. They even look a certain way, unfortunately, you know what I mean? And exactly what they're going to say. They have some skill in controlling the language, and they use it to the maximum just to muddy the water or deflect or just to take some level of oxygen out of the argument. Yeah.
Well, the other thing is also what I thought about was like in the olden days, like, all right, the CIA had to do things like Operation Mockingbird and then get the media to plant all the stories and stuff. Now you have the freaking CIA in the media
and in social media.
So, like, for example, if you look if you look at like MSNBC, right? I just got a list of all these douchebags that work for them. All right, so you have John Brennan, former CIA director. You have Michael Hayden, former CIA director. And then you have the wonderful sellout Indians in there as well. We were talking about Indians before. Asha Rangappa, right? She's a notorious freaking spook, right? And Ned Price, the current spokesperson for the State Department, fucking ex-CIA. You have like this freaking secret police running this place, man, right? Then you have CIA assets like Ken Dilinian, that dude from MSNBC who said fuck on the air, remember? And then he was like, "Ooh, did I really say that?" He's an infamous dude. He literally goes, collects a check from CIA while he collects his talking points and comes right back to MSNBC. did you even know that Anderson Cooper interned for the CIA, right?
Yeah.
Even Tucker applied for the CIA.
Yeah.
Right? And then Jake Tapper, not his porn name, right? Israeli influencer number 19 out of 50, right? He was just voted. So you have all these, just these, like, literally, like, spooks running the in the media. They're not even like, they don't even have the intermediary anymore, right? They've got the guys from the CIA actually working as the media, and the people are just swallowing it. In the olden days, it would be like, I'm not listening to CIA. We need like actual media. When you talk about these people online, just like using word salads to combat all this. And, it's basically the reason they talk about disinformation all the time is because they're the leading purveyors of disinformation, right? They project everything that they say other people are doing to them. And I don't know if you noticed, 2 days ago, Biden blinked. He tried to take Putin up to brinkmanship. Let's go for World War III. And Putin said, don't bring in the warships into the Black Sea, I'll kick your ass. Last minute, Biden orders the ships out. Piece of shit.
Yeah, because I think Tucker ran a very good segment with Tulsi on it.
Right, yeah, she's been up there this week talking about that.
Yeah, she was up on the show looking good as always.
Yeah.
And
That's probably why half of them hate her.
Yeah, she doesn't look ugly enough.
No, shitlibs get triggered by shitlibs get triggered. I used to work with a bunch of shitlibs, and if there was like a nicer looking one, they would lose their fucking minds. Yeah.
Oh yeah. And so because she came on Tucker and she said that are we prepared to see our loved ones, and she had a pretty graphic.
Yeah.
I must say that
she talked about like bones melting, like Sarah Connor at the gates.
Yeah, I know exactly. I was thinking about Sarah Connor. Funny. Yeah, and she was saying, "Are we prepared to see our loved ones burn alive in a nuclear holocaust in a war with Russia over Ukraine? If not, cut out the saber rattling, the macho talk and." De-escalate before it's too late. I mean, she is right. I mean, I did think that she went a bit overboard with the whole description of flesh melting of the bones.
I mean, but because I think she was right to do that, because people have sort of, they've taken, they think nuclear war is nothing. They think it's like, it's just like a video game or something. Just go ask some Hiroshima victim, man, about what it really is.
This is not a drill.
And she actually went through that, remember?
Yeah, exactly. That's who I was saying. I was exactly repeating what she said at the Democratic debate. Incoming. This is not a drill. Because it's kind of turned into a GIF now. You can see it everywhere. Yeah.
And what's that woman's name? Psaki, Jen Psaki, the freaking current propaganda on the Hill, where she gives a press conference every day. So she said that this is a fake story. Now don't forget, Biden ran with this story all summer last year for the election, right? It's Trump's fault. They're putting bounties on our boys and this, that, and the other, with no hint of irony that we're like freaking brutalizing the entire country while we're there, right? And this is the same, basically she wants actually. She used to work for the State Department, so she was a State Department spokesperson before she was like the U.S. press secretary. And she once said in a State Department press briefing that we uphold South America, human rights, and everything. And everyone laughed at her face. One guy even said, "Are you serious? Are you really serious about this?" But the thing is, there's no difference between, they're just more sophisticated, quote unquote, than MAGA. So we're like coastal elites and we went to Ivy League schools, and that's about it. We're equally hillbilly inside in terms of the way our brains work.
Yeah. Jen Psaki, by the way, smash or pass?
Man, I took a look at her boyfriend and I was like, oh my God. And that too, it was on the down low and everything. They were like having like an office romance or something. And that became like a big story. Shitlibs were like, oh, this is a new episode of The West Wing. We love it.
I was actually having a look at her. I was saying, oh, okay, she's not a bad looking chick. And
she's kind of creepy, bro. I'd pass. I'm sorry.
Well, the thing is though, I was assuming that maybe she's in her late 50s or 60s, but she's 30 she's probably a good looking chick in her late 50s or something like that. That's what I thought she was, because but it's like, because I found her, she's not bad looking. But then I checked her up and said, okay, she's 42, so she's around our age, so no wonder. Yeah, so yes. Anyway, do you have any more to say about the whole CIA?
Yeah. This thing goes on and on, right? So my point was basically being like they've this whole Russia bounty story. The reason it even existed is primarily because of complete censorship in the media, right? I mean, the media is not even the media. It's just a bunch of freaking, like one half is the CIA, the other half works for a bunch of oligarchs. And the people, like, I mean, it's just like the propaganda is just like, it's reached like level 15 with Biden around, right? Honestly, like the further away we get from Trump, right? And I'm not for Trump, obviously, but it just looks like, oh my, you get to see that in hindsight, like some presidents look worse. Biden is making this guy look better, right? Like he did the same things Trump was doing, right? He only till yesterday was when he was keeping the Trump limits on refugees. Like he wanted to keep the same limits so no one comes into the country. And I think a bunch of people yelled at him and AOC. Like this virtue signaling crap about refugees, they'll give way on because they don't really lose any money. But they won't do anything where they make money, right? Where they're actually going to lose money, right? So, for example, they were crying about Jimmy and Glenn going on Tucker, and then this Humanist Report dude, right? He jokes himself about going on Tucker, right? And he makes a freaking video about it. Well, he does like a fake video where he's like on one square and Tucker's on the other square, and he's got like some video game playing in the background, and he thought he's being funny, right? And we're like, listen, man, you know. Tucker right now is the only place where anyone can go in the mainstream. Don't forget, he's still got the #1 show, right?
And they want to take him out now, right? The Anti-Defamation League itself had a big, cry about it. But you can understand why, though, because I know that they're using all this. Tucker was talking about the white people are the great, reducing the white population. That's the excuse they're going after, but that's not the real excuse why they're going after Tucker. It's because Tucker absolutely triggered them on one big issue, which was that he asked them, why can't we have the same immigration policies Israel does? Because Israel, run this. And that's what triggered the ADL, because ADL actually has never brought that up. I mean, ADL might occasionally here and there just to sound like the social justice warriors might say something bad about Israel, but they have they're complete hypocrites when it comes to the U.S. immigration policy as opposed to the Israel foreign policy, and that's exactly why the ADL is now growing after Tucker. So so please continue. Sorry, I just wanted to bring that up.
So I mean, like, the you can't really go on there's no other show that'll have like Glenn and it's I think the tragedy of the whole thing is like these guys are our current day Howard Zinns or whatever you want to call them. They're like the historians of today, right? When we get to our 90s, we'll be thinking about Glenn Greenwald like in the same vein as Chomsky or something, and even Chomsky was like, I'm all for Biden. What an idiot at that. He ruined his legacy. But coming back to the CIA, right? So they're doing all these press releases. So what they're doing right now, in fact, I saw a lot of noise about that this morning, is like, usually you'll get some proof, right? Like, okay, this is the proof of like why X and Y are happening. So Trump has been out of office for 4 months. This dude called Marshall Cohen from CNN, he was like on the Mueller train the whole time back in the day. Remember that thing? When Mueller comes out and Trump's going to go down, that went on forever, right? And I mean, man, the shitlibs around me were breaking down, man. Anytime Mueller came on TV, they'd be like, turn on the TV, get online, yo, man, there's a hearing happening now, Trump's going down. All right, so Mueller disappears. He still has Mueller on his byline on Twitter till today. Right? It just goes to show you the derangement of this guy. And he said he saw proof of collusion, but guess where he saw it? You'll never guess. He saw proof of collusion with Russia in a press release by the Treasury Department. Now press releases from the government are proof of everything. Can it get any more North Korean than this? I mean, this place is literally like a dictatorship. The government just gives out, here you go, here, we just think this. Oh, here's a proof, man. I mean, and if there's any source, it's always like an anonymous source. This Russia debunking that happened recently with the CIA, New York Times now says, oh, yeah, it was CIA sourced 1 year after it happened, right? So the anonymous sources are usually always the CIA. It's never like anybody else but these jokers, right? I mean, let's hope they're listening to our podcast, man. We're onto them. But yeah, and the Pentagon war contracts for Afghanistan are still being signed till today, and they expire in 23-24. So this Biden, I'm going to leave on 9/11. Could he be more creepy? Like the end date is going to be 9/11. Like, what are you doing, man? You're not going to leave. We know that. And the contracts, the Pentagon, they're not going to have this, man. They'll be like, we're there forever. The minerals, the poppy for the CIA trade, right? You need that for the drug trade that the CIA does all the time. And so, it's just like, the whole, the censorship, it's like a rabbit hole. I was like, just trying to look into what the extent was. And I was like, you know what? It is so like, and every time I do talk to someone who's like totally into propaganda from the corporate media, it's like telling them like hell and angel exist. It's you can literally sound like a crazy person when you tell them these things, because the propaganda is so real that people are not going to be able to question their own existence and reality, because they've believed this for so long that whatever you may say, it just sounds like, I have a friend who lives up north, and when I told him a few things and he was like, oh, I don't believe you, it's a lie, you don't know anything. I was like, now keep in mind, this guy really doesn't read or know what's going on. He just watches cable news or even worse, network news, right? And to him, I just sounded like some batshit crazy person. But you know what? The rest of the world isn't really falling for this. The Department of Defense just recently, they tried to get a country to offer their bases for launching missiles at China, and they thought they had it in the bag, and Vietnam told me to F off. I was happy to read that. Yeah. I was like, you know what? After all, you think Vietnam's gonna forget?
No, of course, man. No. Well, I can say that partially they kind of have in some ways.
No, that's what they were banking on. They were banking on
big
that.
Buddies.
Yeah.
Yes.
But they tried all the other countries. Singapore, they tried Indonesia. They all said no. Australia said no, get lost. And they thought, okay, Vietnam, because they're not completely in the China sphere. But Vietnam was like, we need to be equidistant away from both you guys. We don't want to be involved in any of you. And that's great. And the DoD just fell on their faces on that. And Max went on to do the Gray Zone did a big article on that. It was a great one. We put it in the show notes so people can read that.
Actually, speaking of Gray Zone, should we talk about the anti-war activist who was visited by the police after posting embarrassing AOC videos? Should we dive
was it Gray Zone? I thought it was in Soapbox, right?
Yeah, I know, but Gray Zone was the one who covered the best article on it, I think. But I think we did earlier mention it briefly, right? That there was a dude, anti-war activist, who was threatened for criticizing AOC. But maybe we should go a bit more into detail about the story, who this guy was, and do you have any news?
I think his name was Ryan, right? He works at Soapbox, right? He's got his own YouTube channel as well. I saw a couple interviews. He did an interview with Status Quo, Jimmy Dore, and a bunch of other people. He basically, I'm trying to remember the tweet. He basically was trying to say that AOC was not really being forceful enough or something to that effect, and he was just questioning, like, listen, you're supposed to fight for us, this really doesn't sound like, I just can't remember the tweet, but that's what it was, and that's all. It was really innocuous. I never thought like 2 minutes about it, and the same when that thing happened, I think a bunch of people got at AOC and she never even replied. She gave some stupid thing about, oh, we've checked with the Capitol Police, blah, blah. You know what? If this had been the other way around and something happened to like some shit-lipped by a right-winger, MAGA or something, she would be like DMing them immediately saying, oh, we're here for you. She never did any of that. She was just like one press office release, like, oh, we've reached out to Capitol Police and that was it. There was nothing else. And he basically was he's a complete leftist. He's on that podcast Left Bitches Who Are Right with Rania.
Okay.
Yeah, he's the guy over there. Yeah. So
Ryan Wentz. I think his name is Ryan Wentz, as you said. And I've got the Gray Zone article. I'll put it on the footnotes, in fact. Where his original tweet was, on April 1st, AOC did a live stream with Michael Miller, the head of the Jewish Community Relations Council of New York. she was asked about the peace between Israelis and Palestinians. Her response was incredibly underwhelming.
Yeah, that's what it was. Yeah.
That's so. It's not even a.
It's like nothing.
Hardly. Yeah, it's nothing. And then this guy gets a visit. I think it says that an anti-war activist was visited by a California Highway Patrol officer after posting a video of the rape Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and her bumbling comments on Israel and Palestine. The action, which AOC denies triggering, was initiated by a call to the U.S. Capitol Police. So someone called, and she says, at her camp says it wasn't them, but I don't think they've been vocal enough to, in fact, discourage this type of behavior. I mean, you would think that she would come out and say that, hey, this is not cool. Whoever did this, knock it off. This is not
but
democracy.
that goes against.
This is not,
she can't do that. You know why? Because they want it to happen to MAGA too. So if she goes after this, she'll have to go to everyone else as well. So I think that's why she didn't do that, because they want this to happen to other people as well. I think he was probably just unlucky, to be honest.
Yeah. I mean, of course, she wants to. She plays this sort of a, it's a very tacit game. She plays a sort of on the fence thing, so she doesn't say anything, but at the same time, she wants to see these type of things happening, so she wouldn't actually come out and be vocal against it, because then she'll have to deal with her. I mean, she knows that she has a base of shit lips as well as, unfortunately, still some real leftists, and they do encourage this type of behavior. I mean, they celebrate it when they see people being arrested or have their lives ruined over minuscule petty shit like this.
Well, she said
love
that she sent out an email after the Capitol 6 riots, telling everyone on her list, hey, if you see something, say something bullshit, right?
Exactly.
And people were like, look at this woman, man. She's sending out the on her entire. She's got a huge, probably a bigger email list than Bernie at this point, right? And she was like, you've got to basically rat out people to the FBI. I mean, oh my God, like, why don't you go back in time and say that, man, when they were busy chasing civil rights leaders, but yeah, and so that really, to me is like, it's the same as so the censorship debate, right? She's trying to control narratives here, and she's using her immense platform to fight people over fighting Mama Bear. I mean, I think last week I saw a quote by Ilhan Omar, right? And she was saying that my relationship with Auntie Nancy Pelosi is so special. I was like, oh my God, you guys are supposed to fight these people. You guys are useless. The only one who actually said anything about the shooting, right, was Rashida Tlaib. But all she said was, she just said something. That's all she did. They're not going to do anything about it. She was given all kinds of props for saying it, like, oh, like she's against the cops. But when it comes to any kind of actual enforcement,
Yeah, she won't be against the cops when it comes to seeing American citizens having their civil liberties eroded for expressing their free speech or something like that. She's just against the cops when it comes to things like police brutality. So it's so cherry picked in every way. So I don't know. And let's talk about Rashida Tlaib, right? I mean, she snuggles up to freaking Nancy Pelosi, who's like the world's biggest contributor, supporter of AIPAC. I mean, what kind of a strange Stockholm syndrome is that?
Oh, and talking about Pelosi, actually, a friend of mine called me the other day, and he told me that he works in stocks and trades, right? He works in that field, and he said there's no way he knew about that Microsoft deal, like where she cashed in just before. So what she did was she put in like over $10 million of stock options on Microsoft stock, right? Okay, she just plunked down 10 million right there, right? And that was just one of the things she did. It's all in open. It's not even an open secret. It's in like the House roll call or whatever that for House. It's a public information. And she did that just before they scored a $24 billion contract with the Department of Defense, right? And he told me there's no way she could have known. I mean, we knew this. None of us knew that the stock was going to go through the roof, and she basically cashed out. So this is the whole inside. So when she does insider trading, it's like, okay. But if it's only like Kelly Loeffler or that other dude, the idiots who lost their elections in Georgia, right? Who lost to bigger douchebags. I mean, the four of them should be thrown in a hole, if you ask me. The Dems and those two people. So the thing is, because I think you told me this today, they're untouchable. They could shoot people in the middle of the street like Trump and get away with it, because the media would just be like, oh, it was just like they were standing up for their civil rights or something like that. So, it's just this whole, and I really wanted to bring up something really important. I think people forget this, especially in this country, is as we get to we're over 10 years from the release of the Collateral Murder video, which brings us back to the number one problem with censorship in this country, and that is the imprisonment of Julian Assange. So it's like most people don't even know who he is here even now. Like, they just don't know. But I mean, if you think about it, like, he was the guy who worked. I mean, I remember WikiLeaks working in tandem with like the New York Times and the Guardian, like over 10 years ago, right? When they first published all that stuff.
Yes.
And they didn't. I mean, even when they did it with Snowden, when Greenwald published it in I think it was, what was it? Was it Guardian was one? I forget was it the Washington Post or was it the New York Times for the Snowden articles? I forget. Maybe
New York Times. New York Times.
Yeah.
Not the Guardian.
So, so those guys aren't hiding in like holes or, taking refuge in Russia. And, I remember seeing an interview with Randy Crediker, who's a comedian, right? He was on Jimmy's show like 4 or 5 years ago. And he was actually at the 2018 White House Correspondents' Dinner. And you had this freaking blowhard. Remember Jim Acosta?
Yes.
I need my press pass.
Yeah, I remember. Right? I remember, yeah.
I mean, this guy, Jim Acosta, I personally know some shitlibs who think he's Jesus, right?
Yeah.
I mean, he was like at the gates of hell, the White House, asking for his press pass, and that's like the ultimate contribution to his journalism, right? Yeah. So this guy, he got up in the middle of all these blowhard journalists who love their coastal elite lifestyles. They love the fact that they get hundreds and thousands of dollars to just sit and pontificate and, basically spew the CIA talking points, right? And he told them, he said, how can you sit here talking about freedom of democracy dies in darkness bullshit line that you keep spewing when Julian Assange is in jail? They had him escorted out like faster than you could blink, and, and then you come into the whole, when it comes to freedom. I remember when he was in the embassy, right, for 7 years, they had the Spanish company UC Global spying on him. They spied on his lawyer. I'm surprised he even had kids while he was in there. The guy, say what you want. He was great at getting down, And I didn't even know that girlfriend of his was his lawyer. Like, this guy I guess he can charm the pants of anyone.
Yeah. He's he seems to be able to. Yes, the finest stock when it comes to
Exactly. And, Biden, for all the people who think he's any different from Trump, he called him a high-tech terrorist back in 2014 or 2012 or something like that. And he's just the same as Trump. So the propaganda is what keeps this going. And this guy, Biden, every day, he does something that's just like Trump, and somehow it's not like Trump. It's just like, up is down, left is right, black is white. It's just insane. And, I don't know what honestly, people always, when I talk to them, I go, what solutions do you have? Are you kidding me? The whole country lives in a freaking Truman Show, man.
It's funny, isn't it, when it comes to Assange? I know these guys, some of them who identify themselves as leftists, even people who says who support Bernie, but you can see that as soon as you attack the Democratic Party, you can see their neoliberal clause come out, and suddenly, they will even when they know that the Democrats the Democrats completely fucked over Bernie, they would still be out there only focusing on attacking Republicans and the right wing, and they will always unite with the fucking Democrats to carry water on everything. And I know a few people like that, and you can see when it comes to Assange, it doesn't matter what he, exposed, the Barclays or the Iraq or whatever, but they seem to exclusively focus on, Assange lied in 2016. It's all about, like I said before, it's like the QAnon cult for moving the goalposts to, keep Trump at the center of all that. It's exactly like that with the Democratic Party. I mean, if you look at the kind of their whole style of attack or defense, it's always to make sure that the Democratic Party is unharmed, and they use all kinds of. I know this guy on Facebook. He's like tries to call himself a principal leftist, but he's not. I mean, he is in essence just a fucking like a Klaus Schwab looking old cunt. But you can see that even everything he does is always like the QAnon. He says he's not a Democrat. He doesn't support the Democrats. He's with Bernie, blah blah blah. But you can see all everything he posts, everything he argues, every style of attack he does seems to sort of tacitly done with the intention of making sure that the Democratic Party comes out unscratched.
He was talking about the 1,400 checks being so great, and it was. I mean, like, are you kidding me? It was 2,000, man.
Yeah. Oh God, he became like a used car salesman when it comes to the fucking 1,400 checks. But at the same time, 12 months ago, he was criticizing Trump's stimulus package. Oh, it doesn't bail out the undocumented immigrants or whatever the fucking. I mean, he was acting like this busybody running around trying to fix this. Look at me, I'm the hero type attitude, and he always does that. He's just. God, Bernie's such a fraud.
I mean, he's been in that snake pit for like 40 years, man. I mean, can you really? I mean, I think he was to see real Bernie socialist, and even then, you don't even know if he was really socialist because, like you said, they were selling those Gatling guns. But and for those who don't know what I'm talking about, check out our first episode where we talk about Bernie a lot. But yeah, I mean, when you look at those 80s clips, I mean, before he got into Congress in 1990, right? So before that was when I think it's like, I'm telling you, they get their minds wiped the moment they enter Congress. I mean, this woman, what's her name? Cori Bush, right? She was proposing like 9/11 style Gestapo freaking bills just like seconds after the Capitol riot finished, It was like, hey, this was like lying here, just like the AUMF and the Patriot Act, and we're just gonna dust this off right now and get it ready to be like ushered in. I'm surprised that they haven't pushed that yet. I mean, I haven't heard anything about it since then.
Oh man, yeah. I mean, you can sort of look at some of these people and say that easily once they get into a position of power, they are easily corruptible. Whether it was the BLM Marxists with a huge portfolio of property, or whether it is Cori Bush, or whether it is some of these civil rights leaders. Remember how we once saw that Zoom call with the civil rights leaders, and I was laughing at they were saying, you can tell that these people over the years, they have enjoyed the fine shit, and now they are easily corruptible just by looking at their faces. I mean, that's the sad state. But what can you do, man? I mean, this is just how most people are.
Jimmy Dore does say that you have to be the most mediocre person to get into politics today, and that's so true. I don't know a single person who's either in politics or trying to get into politics is not mediocre, because I think you need your mind wiped before you get in. There's no way that any kind of totally like innocent, honest, do-gooder is ever going to, first of all, amount to anything. They're going to take their legs out before they even step in. So I think the people who do get in, they know this, and they're like, you know what? I'm just going to go for like, the cash or whatever.
Yeah, I think Chapo had a Chapo Trap House, the podcast that's now constantly being attacked by the shit-lip media. They once brought up something that was very radical. At that time, I was like, oh, fuck, what are you talking about, kind of? But now it's just making more and more sense to me. And they said that, I think during the Force the Vote time, they told the people, if you are relying on any of the people elected to the Congress to get anything done, to get accomplish what you want, then you are completely delusional, because once you are in that system, you're not going. Yeah, you're fucked. Yeah. But
if you think about it, all these leftists on Twitter, right?
Yeah.
When that Nancy Pelosi roll call was happening, they seemed so shocked, like AOC let them down. That is the first problem. You idiots are still believing that AOC was going to help you just 4 months ago, right? Well, why did it take you so? I mean, after going through Obama, couldn't you like know that they're all full of shit? Every single one of them.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, what's so different? In many ways, AOC is Obama, right? I mean, if you look at the Obama drinking water from in Flint, Michigan, to AOC crying at the border, this is the same breed. Yeah.
We need to figure out, like, how to really disseminate this. Look at YouTube, right? I mean, I'm going to keep I've got a running timer here to see from the day we get demonetized, if you ever reach there, because, I mean, we're talking about things that YouTube never wants us to talk about. I think we get away with it because I remember our first episode, I used Syria with a $sign and put a inverted exclamation or something for an I, and they were like, they let us keep, because if you put Syria or any kind of word like that, like even Richard Meadows was talking about how if people donate money to him on Patreon, if they mention Iran or Syria, he doesn't get paid. So this thing is happening from a multifaceted level, like from demonetizing creators to not getting you paid to like stifling every little bit. Now, I thought about this a while back being in tech, like people should just, I mean, I assume it's really hard to get a website to get traction, right? But I see a lot of people doing that now on YouTube. They refer people to their websites instead because they know that these platforms are completely bought and paid for, completely taken over. I mean, I read an article like a few months ago about how podcasts were sort of getting away with it, quote unquote.
Oh yeah, and they had an image of they had a picture of Joe Rogan in the front, just so that they.
So and the shitlibs were like, okay, it's time to start freaking monitoring podcasts. Now we got to make sure that they don't get out there.
yeah, exactly. I mean, they've taken a swing at podcasts, so they're I think. I have a friend, Tina. She uses an interesting term called predictive programming. Basically, from an early stage, they're implanting that seed so they can work on it later and later. So it's sort of a, that boiling frog theory. So you put it out there now, and then later on, it will be easy for you to manufacture consent for it. So, and that's what they're doing. I mean, CNN, I remember first published an article about how podcasts are getting away with it. And they had an image of Joe Rogan in the thumbnail. And so... so it was very clear they're going after this guy. And they keep bringing up the fact that he falsely brought up leftists responsible for some arson or something, which he actually apologized for. I mean, it was just a spur of the moment. I mean, Joe Rogan has 3-hour podcasts. Of course, he's going to have a slip of the tongue from here and there.
They're going to go for any little bit they can get.
Yeah. So, I mean, he's apologized for that. But, I mean, how many times have the big media apologized? I mean, has CNN ever apologized for the Iraq war? No.
I'm still waiting for this. I'm still waiting for the CIA retraction, right? This fucking story.
Exactly. So, and they continue to hammer on this one little fucking issue on Joe Rogan. It's fairly clear they're going to go after podcasts, and they're going to find a way to go after podcasts as well, because most podcast apps now, they are having this new technology. For example, if you go for Castbox or something, when I'm listening to American podcasts, I see Australian ads in between, in the beginning of the podcast or whatever. Right, so these are not the ads that are directly linked to the podcast itself, but linked to the app that sponsors ads. So that's how they're going to use this model. I can predict right now. So if they want a certain podcast to not appear on a certain popular podcast app, they will use this model to try and say, you know what, you can't have that podcast because we are losing ad revenue. So they are doing it. They did it with YouTube, obviously. So this is another way they are going to go after a lot of the dissenting voices.
And what about that whole there's all kinds of crazy shit happening in Brooklyn Center in Minnesota right now, right? Because of the killing of, I think, Duante, right?
That's
his name.
Yeah,
right?
That's right.
So sorry, was his name, a very, very sad shooting, very unjustified, and like the usual, that's a podcast in itself. But I think that even all this stuff is a multi-part effort in enforcing a worldwide police state, right? So, for example, they were having this the protests the last 3 or 4 days, right?
Yeah.
The state police was telling all the journalists to line up so they could take their pictures. The pictures of the journalists. The police wants to take a lineup of pictures of journalists. Why don't you just take them to firing squad already, man? You're just like seconds from there, right? So, and the thing is, like, again, like, how is this normal? You know?
It is not. It's not. It's definitely. I mean, this is some dystopian shit, and we should actually try and also cover some other stories while we are on this dystopian shit. And another thing was Project Veritas. I don't know if you heard about it, but their account got banned.
Oh yeah, because they exposed the technical director talking shit about how they wanted COVID numbers to like be high and debts to be high so they could like reap the benefits, right?
Yeah, exactly. And
but it's Project Veritas, right? They're like bad, so like get rid of them.
Yeah, I know, and I see a lot of the useful idiots from of course, Silicon Valley surrogates like The Verge and everyone coming out, and yeah, so yeah, it's almost unreadable. We already know that the stories about the BLM leaders, property portfolio, those posts have been taken down from Facebook, or at least
you can't share the link either.
So,
you can. They're doing the same thing like with the Hunter Biden laptop.
Oh yeah,
story.
let's talk about that because there was a big development since our last podcast. Hunter Biden laptop story, another one that nothing to see here now. Yeah,
it's legit. But it's legit. A bunch of forensic experts went through this and it's all real. And they just needed a suppress for the election.
And did you see some of the content in that fucking laptop?
I saw his teeth. You see his meth teeth?
Oh my!
It's like ground down stuff. You look like some hillbilly, man. And the worst part is this is a guy who's a high on meth, screwing hookers, doing all the shit that his dad put people in jail for life for. He's doing it out in the open.
Yes, exactly.
And of course, there's a text between him and his dad, like, "Oh, I'm such a failure." I mean, I would have kicked his ass out if I was Biden. Seriously.
Yeah, I mean, Jesus Christ, man, and then it's shocking. I mean, I don't want to spend too much time wasting on the contents of the laptop. I mean,
I think the problem was his $80,000 a month job. That's the problem.
Yeah, but it's the hypocrisy.
I mean, the guy didn't know shit about like fucking Ukrainian energy.
Yeah, exactly, and it's a hypocrisy, and the fact that they told us not to. That this whole thing is a conspiracy and it's all fake, and now they're quietly just saying, "Oh, it's all just happened," but they don't care about. They don't even want to.
Election over, man.
I mean, unbelievable how they accused you of being a conspiracy theorist, and then suddenly now it's all like so shameless the way they do it. They just wait for things to cool off, and then suddenly.
Well, that's what Cuomo's doing right now. He's waiting for things to cool off. He's been hiding the whole time, right? We did that in our third episode where you asked me whether he's going to go or stay. What's happened? He's still here, right?
Exactly. It's just...
Yeah, he's just waiting for this thing to blow over. And all the people who went after him, or I don't know if you heard about this, right? So all the people he claimed to have molested and like semi-raped or whatever, all the women, right? First of all, they're all like the Christine Blasey Ford types, all rich, all white, right? Those are the only kind of interns he ever like hired. Those survivors, you'll never guess who they're attacking. Take a wild guess. Come on, you know it.
Survivors?
Yeah, those survivors are going online and harassing. Guess who they're harassing now? The survivors of Cuomo's attacks.
Survivors of guess who they're harassing now? Guess who? The families, right?
No, they're harassing Tara Reid.
Okay.
Who the fuck? If you're a victim yourself, why would you attack another victim?
Exactly.
You see, that's why I felt that totally like this Cuomo shit could just be like, like the Me Too that follows the real scandal. Like the hospital thing didn't get rid of him, so they needed like another bullet to go in there. And if you really got raped or molested, why would you like go after someone else who's been also raped and has more proof? Because I think Tara Reid's mother went on CNN in 1993
more proof than Christine Blasey
She talked about this.
More proof than some professor who came out of nowhere. Exactly.
Well, that's because Tara Reid had a bankruptcy and she's poor, so she must be a liar, right?
No, not like this golf swinging yacht club bitches. From Palo Alto, California, right? Yeah. So.
Nope. That's the thing, and it's funny when I see all these middle class people around me, like pumping their fists for Christine Blasey fucking Ford. I'm just like, do you know that they don't give a shit about your existence, and you guys are like, they it's just like the same thing. She was supposed to be like the bullet for Trump, right? Even now, everything that's bad, it's still Trump's fault. I know, I'll just say his name and people around me get triggered. Still, I think that he was the best thing that the establishment had for themselves. Now that he's gone, they're going to try to get him back, and he's probably inking deals right now on how he's going to come back, because he's just another part of the same equation. They need this fake dichotomy happening so that people just get distracted about the real ass fucking behind them that's happening.
Yeah,
right?
Totally, man. Is there any other big stories you wanted to talk a bit about Democracy Now! And Lincoln Project, didn't you?
Well, I mean, this is all getting back to the same. It's just part of the whole, how even what you would call old stalwarts, where you could depend on Democracy Now! Like 10, 15 years ago. I remember there was this clip of Amy Goodman at the MSNBC anniversary in 2008 or something like that. And she talked about, do you remember Phil Donahue, right? So Phil Donahue got fired before the Iraq War, when the Iraq War started, for questioning it, right? She actually mentioned in that clip that I do wish he was back here at MSNBC. MSNBC never had her on the air after that, right? But the reason I bring her up is because Democracy Now! Is having Lincoln Project people come on their network and wax poetic about George W. Bush and how great of a compassionate conservative he was. And I think I saw Aaron Mate give an interview about this to Jimmy. And Jimmy released it as a ex-employee goes off on Democracy Now! Clip. And he basically said that they were so different, and now even they've become this, no questions asked. Here's a government stenography going on, and it's just like, if someone like Democracy Now! What would cause Democracy Now! To go that way? That's the thing. If an independent media like them can also go the same way, even TYT, right? I mean, TYT's on the corporate algorithm at YouTube. They're constantly propping up Madeleine Albright. And, they just, it's become like, I love seeing Jimmy's rants on TYT, although I think he's just like focusing a little bit too much on them now. He'll keep talking about how bad they are and how good he is. But you know what? Like, we know, man. Don't waste time.
Jimmy can be a bit of a grifter. Let's not do that.
I mean, but they did the same thing with him, right? 1.5 million house, a 2 million house. Hey, what about Bernie's $1 million house, right? But he's like 40 years in the freaking Congress, man. I mean, I think I'll give him a pass. And if you think about it, like, I don't, you know what, like, it's one thing to like buy all these houses and like live in them, but the BLM founder was, she bought her houses in white neighborhoods.
I know, 1.4% white.
I mean, black.
That is what. Yeah, 1.4% black. I mean, she wants to move away from. And this is the same thing I saw Michelle Obama coming on TV once and accusing all the middle class and white citizens. You white folks, you move away from these neighborhoods up to the hills or whatever. I mean, like, get the fuck out of here. What the fuck did you do? You all went and bought a house, $45 million mansion in Martha's Vineyard, and you're telling all these people, you're blaming all these working class people and middle class people. Funny how Michelle Obama tells kids about climate change, and then she goes and buys a house, right? And she talks about the dangers of the ocean rising and blah, blah, blah. But then she goes and buys a house, right? where there is an ocean, like that could be rising. Yeah. That's because she knows the kids will be propagandized no matter what. So she could tell them she could fly and they'd believe her. So. It's just the power. That is the power, and how do you combat that? I mean, that, and I spoke about this with someone else the other day. Like back in the day, like when I say back in the day, I mean just 30, 40, 50 years ago, you had people willing to put their lives on the line, right? Like Martin Luther King, Malcolm X. Who's going to do that now? Podcasters? I don't think so, right? So the thing is, like, I think the ruling elite and the predator class know that this is exactly how things are going to be. No one's going to question shit. Just look at your goddamn iPhone and shut the fuck up, all right? And know what's good for you. Because if you step out of line, you're going to be like, in another world of pain and hurt, and you don't want to be there. You need to keep pushing for that American dream. And getting back to the Lincoln Project, did you hear about the allegations against John Weaver? There was I think there were like allegations against John Weaver by 21 young men who were.
I think the reason I didn't follow it is because this is such a grifting organization, like the biggest one of the lot, right? And they were like they only got to fame because they were against Trump. They're freaking neocons from the Bush era.
So now
And one of them introduced Sarah Palin to us.
Yeah, so they were basically an anti-Trump. For those who don't know, Lincoln Project is an anti-Trump super PAC that
I would say was.
Yeah. So according to the allegations from former staff, Aviva had sexually harassed at least 21 young men. But an Associated Press report published Thursday revealed leadership at the organization was well aware of Weaver's behavior since at least 2020. The group now says it will hire an outside investigator to evaluate Weaver's conduct. Anyway, is there anything else we didn't touch up on this episode that we should have? Any other important stuff?
I think I'm pretty much done here. Yeah, last week was, I think I was just kind of busy, and I was apologize to our listeners if they were expecting an episode. We just really wanted to get deep down into this, and I don't even think this, we barely touched the surface of this whole censorship propaganda is police state, but I'm sure it'll always come up based on any story we do. It's always related if you think about it now, right?
Yeah, so I mean, you can see these type of things a mile away. I think I do have something to say before we close this episode, and one of the reasons why we chose the title for this podcast, Beyond Narratives, is that we want to actually explore beyond every narrative. So we don't want to stick with a certain narrative because it suits a certain type of a base or a certain type of a worldview. So if you are to talk about Hong Kong protests, I know that we can say, that this is communism against democracy, but at the same time, we also know that a lot of that shit was also sponsored by neocons to destabilize China. But that doesn't mean that we want to just stick with one or the other. We want to explore the nuance because there is truth to it. Whether it is with the Uyghurs, a lot of people like to stick to the narrative that Uyghurs are being prosecuted for being, for being an ethnic minority in China. But we also like to show that. Okay, yeah, that is true, but Uyghurs are not innocent on this issue as well, because there is actually a lot of things, the activities that Uyghurs have been involved with over the years that are very concerning, especially in a country like China, that the amount of explosives they were able to smuggle into that country with the type of laws and regulations that they have deserves scrutiny. And at the same time, I want to actually end this episode by talking about this one very interesting article I saw from the Guardian from 2011, which was actually where they say that I will actually, let me just get the article up. And this is a classic example of what narratives are. So, we are constantly fed the narrative that, certain type of leaders, certain type of aspects of history, they've been cherry-picked and glorified, while we are not allowed to even sort of explore the nuance of another one. For example, you can lose your Facebook or your social media account for simply even having an image of Hitler, even if that image is critical of Hitler. Yeah, you know what I mean? They go to such extreme lengths to make sure that nothing about that part of the history is talked about. But the same Guardian also, not long while ago, they had an article called "While Genghis Khan was good for the planet." And so basically the argument that they are making is that, Genghis Khan, in fact, may have not been a great warrior, may have not just been just the greatest warrior, but the greatest eco-warrior of all time, according to a study by the Carnegie Institution's Department of Global Energy. It has concluded that the 13th century Mongol leader's bloody advance, laying waste to vast swaths of territory and wiping out entire civilizations en route, may have scrubbed off 700 million tons of carbon from the atmosphere, roughly the quantity of carbon dioxide generated in a year through the global petrol consumption, by allowing previously populated and cultivated lands to return to carbon absorbing forests. So this is what I mean. Like, so that, like, I put up a meme saying that when you make a when you make love and war in a remarkably eco-friendly manner. I mean that this is a typical case of how narratives are constructed, and so basically they want us to have this succumb to this narrative that if you are a leader from a certain part of the world, representing a certain ethnic group or representing a certain ideology, then those leaders, we will give them a pass. I think Dan Carlin, the famous historian who also has a great podcast, I recommend anyone. I think he mentioned something very good. It's like he makes a point that as we get further from events in history, it becomes easier to ignore the truly horrific parts of that history and talk about the good stuff that the public, for example, the public perception of Alexander the Great is probably generally favorable, although if you ask a Persian or a Spartan or an Egyptian, it's not. But that this is the narrative that we want to go beyond, that we want to explore. I mean, I'm not even being critical of Guardian for putting this one. I think, so maybe there is a nuance that is worth exploring. But at the same time, though, they are also wildly inconsistent. They want us to, believe in that narrative. But if we were to ever, talk about something else that is against their worldview, I'm not particularly talking about Nazism here, but I think that is but not even Nazism. Even during the Trump time, you know what I mean? Like even during the Trump era, there's so much of information from Trump era that's being suppressed right now by social media, and these are the same people who want us to believe that Genghis Khan was good for climate change. You know what I mean? I mean, this is a clear-cut example of how we are being forced to align with certain types of narratives, and it's all being cherry-picked. And right now, I mean, I'm not surprised that they will bring this up, making us want to believe that Genghis Khan was good for the planet, because there is all this. There was recently a documentary by David Attenborough of documentary shows what happens to Earth when you take humans out of circulation for a year. So, there is this whole push for depopulation happening because of climate change. Yeah, once again, the World Economic Forum conspiracy. So, of course, they are going to want to, test the waters with very extreme stuff like Genghis Khan, just to make us believe that, maybe mass population control or killing people off or genocide is maybe one solution to taking care of this. And that's one reason why we did pick this podcast title to be Beyond Narratives, because we want to show that these are the narratives, and you are often severely discouraged or being scrutinized or in fact being harassed for going beyond that narrative. And we want to make you aware of the fact that sometimes when you want to talk about things and have an honest opinion, you have to be able to step outside and not try to attack people because it goes against a certain narrative. And I see a lot of smart people constantly doing that. Every time they, if I saw a friend of mine once said on both sides. She said on both sides for some argument, and then this other guy was like, isn't that what Trump said? Good, fine people on both sides. So he quickly just used that narrative just to suppress her from even using that phrase. Yeah. So, and that you see this all the time now, and it just drives me insane that people are more and more being brainwashed into sticking to narratives.
That's a wrap, and we'll be back next week to do it all over again. If you need to catch us, we're on Twitter. I go by AlanFX_. And Chris goes as True Free Thinkers, or is it Thinkers True? Yeah, I think it's at Thinkers True. And you can also find us on Spotify, Beyond Narratives, as well as YouTube, youtube.com/C/Beyond Narratives. We'll be back next week to do it all over again. So till then, see ya and peace out.